Hey guys, it's HD1 here, and well, today it should be around like the 20th, around 17 to 20 days after my last video. So, yeah, the reason why it took so long was I was making this one, basically an analysis video on the RX 6000 6000 XT. So the first thing we're gonna be talking about in this video is the stock. Yeah, it was honestly a paper launch. I heard that there's none in Europe, and in Canada only Newegg was selling it. So yeah, it was honestly a paper launch. To be honest, if this was last year, even though the stock was barely any, it probably wouldn't have been a paper launch. Like at least for some places, like in Canada, like they didn't really have any cards, so it was a straight up paper launch in Canada. And there were stores like Memory Express saying that they didn't have any stock at all. Canada Computers, if you go on the website, there's none there. In Newegg, Newegg, like the American viewers probably use Newegg to buy their computer parts. Newegg is in Canada, but all the cards got sold out there too. I was hoping on the 25th, 2 days ago when the AIB cards launched, that they would add more stock. I was gonna try at 9 a.m. to see if it was possible to put in your card and stuff, but I forgot. So yeah, either way, it didn't happen. Like the AIB cards should make a paper launch too. What's even worse is that the AIB cards are pretty expensive. I'll talk about that later on, but I'm gonna continue on about how it's a paper launch. When you guys might be able to get it. So I'm thinking that in December there's probably gonna be more stock. It should be easier in December. Because I heard that in the news, basically like the rumor mill and news stuff like that, they're saying that AMD bought more wafers from TSMC, so hopefully they might add more stock. I don't think there's gonna be that much more stock in December, but yeah, 2021, it's looking like that's when you're gonna be buying a graphics card. Also, remember that AMD is making Xbox chips, CPUs and GPUs for the Xboxes, CPUs and GPUs for the PS5. I just remember all the last launches, honestly. Zen 3, that was, well, it's not really a paper launch, but, I can find some of those CPUs. It's just that, on Newegg, for example, it's, those resellers who are, putting it up for, $200, $300, basically scalpers putting it up for more money on Newegg. So yeah, to be honest, I think in 2 months when we compare the AMD launch to Nvidia's, for that entire 2 month period that Nvidia had, especially launched in September and now it's November. If we compare AMD's launch to Nvidia's 2 month period, hopefully they're gonna have more cards because recently in the news, let's just say, it sounds like Nvidia was actually selling some of the graphics cards to miners, not a fully built graphics cards, but mainly the die and probably the RAM. So yeah, it seemed like a ton of cards that were supposed to go to Asus and stuff, it actually just went to a ton of cards that MSI, Asus, the AIBs were expecting to come, the dies. It just went straight to miners, not normal miners, but big mining firms. So yeah. So like I said, I was gonna talk about later on why the AIB cards are so expensive before I get into the performance and all that stuff of these cards. So it's one of these two reasons. So a YouTuber named Moore's Law is dead, a leaker. He's saying that the AIBs MSI and or Asus are pricing these cards higher since they are making that much margin on the Nvidia cards, so they're trying to make more margin on the AMD cards, while others Hardware Unboxed are saying that AMD are selling the dies to AIBs for much more than they usually would, which means that the AIBs have to price their cards higher so they can make decent margins, not even decent, but overall some margin. Both could be right, to be honest, or one could be wrong, but these AIB prices are kind of insane. But I have a feeling that probably during the financial reports, we're going to see who's right. When it comes to the AIB cards, yeah, in America, well, to be honest, I'm not gonna lie. Americans are kind of lucky because in Canada, we like for example the water cooled Gigabyte card. I think it was the water cooled Gigabyte RX 800 XT. In America, I think it's like $900 in America. We pay like $100 more, and like you have to pay taxes on top of that. So like, yeah, and like other countries outside of the U.S., it's not really looking that nice for stock. Either Moore's Law is dead or Hardware Unboxed could be right, or both at the same time. But like I said, financial reports will see like if the AIBs are losing money compared to like Q3, Q2 of this year. So let's get into the new features of the AMD cards. Let's get off the train about stock, people launches, all that stuff. Let's talk about how good performing these cards are. But first, I'm going to talk about some of the features. So one of the new features AMD has is Infinity Cache. Infinity Cache is basically an L3 cache, but for GPUs. Its gigantic 128 megabytes of cache allows more things to be stored in a faster cache. The reason it's not stored in L2 and L1 cache is because it can't store that much data, since the cache isn't big enough. Even though L2 and L1 are faster than L3. AMD's Infinity Cache is faster than VRAM. So if more things are stored into the cache, it can be more quickly accessed than if it was stored in the VRAM. This allows AMD to use smaller memory buses, which in turn lower power consumption since you don't need that many memory controllers. Another new feature AMD has is Smart Access Memory. This gives Zen 3 CPUs full direct access to the GPU's memory, which is 16 gigabytes of VRAM. Usually the CPU can only access 256 megabytes at a time, but this allows the CPU to access the full 16 gigs of RAM that the GPU has. I know that Linux had this feature first, but yeah, continuing on, this should give you around 2 to 12% performance uplift depending on the game. Also, this feature isn't exclusive to AMD. Nvidia plans to add this feature to their cards in a future driver update, and honestly, probably Intel, when they release their GPUs, will probably add it. Well, I know it's confirmed for Nvidia that they'll add it, but what I'm saying is that, since AMD and Nvidia have this feature, Intel, when they release their cards, are probably going to drop it. I'm going to add it too. So, another new feature is called Rage Mode. This is not really that big of a deal. It's just basically an auto. It's not even an auto. They say it's an auto OC, but it's not. AMD's drivers already come with an auto OC button that you press. It's pretty decent. Rage Mode just raises it's just very simple. Just raises the power limit of your card. Basically, if you raise the power limit of your card, if your card was power limited, your card would boost higher. Because the card can only use a certain amount of power. If you raise the limit of power, it's allowed to use, the card will boost slightly higher. But overall higher. So let's get into performance. So it seems like the 6800 XT is about 7% slower than the 3080 at 4K, while the 6800 is around 8% faster than the 3070 at 4K. When tested in lower resolutions, the lead for the 3080 dropped in some games, and to be honest, the 6800 XT, which is kind of insane, could beat the 3090 in some games. In AMD-sponsored titles like Godfall or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the 6800 XT is on par with the 3090. The 6800 XT is on par with the 3090. And the 6800 is around on par with the 3080. The graphs will be up from Hardware Unboxed. When it comes to performance of these cards, it's not as easy as it used to be. For example, if you saw a DX12 or Vulcan game with an older AMD card versus an older Nvidia card, you can honestly get away with assuming that the AMD card will win. But now with these cards, it's highly dependent on which game you're playing. Though one thing that is consistent is that at lower resolutions, the AMD cards are scaling better than the Ampere GPUs. The reason this is happening is because the way the Ampere architecture was designed is that it was designed to prioritize compute over gaming performance, since it was more for the data centers and stuff. With RDNA 2, AMD specifically designed it for gaming. Also, Ampere really prioritized high resolution gaming rather than low resolutions. Like honestly, if some tech sites did a comparison between the 3090 and the soon to release 6900 XT in 8K, the 3090 will win. Like I'm telling you right now, the 3090 is really likely to win because it scales better at higher resolutions. But while AMD scales better at low resolutions. Hardware Unboxed, he made a video proving this point. He basically showed that the Ampere cards scale worse than the Turing resolution. Than the Turing cards at low resolution like the 1080p. I'll show you some of this, like some of his graphs. This is Hardware Unboxed, TechSpot Steve who did this. As you can see, it does scale worse than Turing. So some of the things that Nvidia did to these cards, it seems like one of them had like a more negative effect and actually dropped gaming dropped gaming performance when you drop it to a low resolution. Technically, it's supposed to be getting a few more FPS than that. So let's move on to ray tracing performance. Well, in some games, it performs pretty well. Computer-based and other tech sites found it to be on par with the Nvidia counterparts in games like Watch Dogs Legion, and other outlets found it to be ahead in Dirt 5. And honestly, I suspect it will be ahead in Godfall since that's a AMD sponsored title. Dirt 5 and Godfall are AMD sponsored titles, so it kind of makes sense for them to be winning in those titles. In other titles, it's okay, like Cyber Tomb Raider or Modern Warfare. The 6800 is close to the 3070, like pretty close, like few percentages off, while the 6800 XT is much further than the 3080. But other outlets found like that in games like Control or Minecraft, the performance it tanks. Also, when I say I think before we all see that AMD's ray tracing is bad, we should wait for games that have ray tracing support on the console. Computer-based and other outlets think that since RDNA 2 is in the consoles, and since Watch Dogs Legion has ray tracing support with the console and was optimized for the RDNA 2 architecture, that AMD's ray tracing performance might be honestly might increase over time, fine wine. Yeah, that's a bad joke, because fine wine, because AMD's performance increases over time. That's what the joke's about. Whatever. Also, you have to remember that games like Tomb Raider, Control, Minecraft were mostly optimized for the way Nvidia cards do ray tracing, which is denoising through the tensor cores, while AMD does their denoising with the compute shaders. And now this is a few days. Well, I started to make this video a few days ago, but now it's been recently revealed that Metro Exodus will get some next-gen upgrades for the new consoles, including ray tracing support. I wouldn't be surprised if the ray tracing performance, in this game went up since they decided to optimize it for the AMD cards, and they added ray tracing support to the consoles. So I think honestly the tech reviewers said we benchmark that game in ray tracing mode. I'm curious to see the results of that one. So let's talk about power consumption, temperatures, and noise. AMD since the 7000 series, the 7970, 7870, that series, have gained a reputation of their cards being hot and loud. And the question you're probably asking is, do these cards run hot, or do they run hot and are they loud? Well, the answer is no. Strangely enough, these cards are actually pretty quiet. TechPower found that these cards are pretty quiet, with the 6800 at 34 decibels at 70C and 6800 XT at 34 decibels at 78C. Sorry, I think that may be incorrect. Let me just recheck my notes. Alright, so basically the 6800 runs at 70C at 34 decibels, while the 6800 XT is at 77C at 31 decibels. So yeah, I was incorrect before. Oops. So yeah, these cards are actually pretty quiet. The temps and the noise are pretty good when you compare it to AMD's other reference designs, like the 290X, the RX 480, the Vega 56 and 64. Yeah, so let's go on to the power consumption. AMD is known for like overvolting the cards, overclocking it, where they never the cards from the get go. So like if you know like what I mean by that, by overclocking and overvolting, is that AMD like they overvolt their cards a little too much, that every time let's say you own the AMD card, you probably could get a nice undervolt on it. When I say overclocking, I mean that they didn't have to push the card that high. They could have used a lower clock and gone around the same performance, but they pushed the card higher and they got, let's say, 10% performance, but 10% more performance, but they increased power consumption by like 30 more percent. So that's what I mean. So let's see. So continuing on, let's see how power hungry these beasts are. Well, they're actually pretty power efficient, even more efficient than the Nvidia cards. When it comes to power consumption, these cards actually consume less power or more than their Nvidia counterparts. Most tech sites found the 6800 XT consumes less than the 3080, while the 6800 only consumes around 78% more performance than the 3070, while offering around 7% or more performance in most titles. This shows that AMD wasn't kidding around when they said that RDNA 2 had a 50% performance per watt increase over first gen RDNA. It also shows that AMD has finally learned their lesson and stopped pushing the clock speeds on their card just to gain slightly more performance at a massive increase in heat and power consumption. Now let's talk about overclocking. Well, overclocking, some of these cards should be able to get around 2.3 to 2.8 gigahertz. I read somewhere that PC World, quote me if I'm wrong, but I read somewhere that PC World got like 2.8 gigahertz. And Hardware Unboxed with their Sapphire Nitro Plus, an AIB card. Honestly, you shouldn't buy the AIB cards, but I'm going to leave it here. They got 2.6 gigahertz on the AIB version of this RX 300 XT, the Sapphire one. This shows that AMD, like I said before, learned the lesson about pushing the clock speeds too hard on the clock. One quick thing, please, you guys probably don't want to buy the AIB cards, like they're pretty expensive. Like some of them are $200 more. Like I'm pretty sure the MSRP of the 6800 XT is $650, while the Sapphire Nitro is like $800. So you probably don't want to buy that because the MSRP for 3080 is like $700, and you probably get decent AIB cards for the 3080 at $800. So you probably don't want to go out and buy $800 XT. The entire point of that card is to be cheaper, so you don't want to spend more than how much you were on a 3080. So let's talk about the drivers. Well, reviews are saying that the drivers are fine with these cards. You haven't run into like any major issues or anything, but this is the problem. They said the same thing with the 5700 and the XT, and we knew how bad the AMD drivers were. Like the early 2020 drivers, the late 2019 drivers, the early 2020 drivers, we knew how bad those drivers are. So what you need to do, to be honest, is you should honestly wait, check the AMD Reddit or RPC Masteries, just check forums overall, see if people are running into any major issues. Check newer reviews, see if they're running into any issues. But at this point, it seems like these cars don't really have any driver problems. So we're at the point where I'm going to be talking about the recommendations as far as the performance. Okay, so while Nvidia doesn't scale better at higher resolution, while Nvidia does scale better at higher resolutions, Call of Duty 3070 doesn't have enough VRAM for 4K. It's 8 gigabytes of VRAM is just not enough. Check this graph. This is from Hardware Unboxed. This is I think this is from the review for 3070. I just don't remember which one it came from, but this is the main point. This is Doom Eternal running at 4K Nightmare with ultra textures. The first graph, okay? Look how the 3070 is about on par with the 2080 Ti. Now watch this. We go to 4K Nightmare, not 4K Nightmare with ultra textures, but this time we're going to 4K Nightmare settings, because before it was 4K Nightmare with ultra textures. So a 4K Nightmare, which is basically max settings for Doom Eternal. Look at the performance drop. It dropped by 16% in the averages and 30% drop in the 1% low. When the game is at 4K max settings in Doom Eternal, the performance is gonna drop at the 3070. Another thing that I've noticed is that the Radeon 7, that card, it's being the 2080, which you don't really see that often. Now look if the let me show you if they drop textures again. Let me just show you this again. But if they drop textures, the 3070 is back to being on par with the 2080 Ti, and the Radeon 7 loses to the 2080 Ti. So if you want DLSS and RTX and ray tracing and all that stuff, better ray tracing performance, I'll say get the 3080, but not the 3070, because see, this is the thing. The 6800, with the Radeon cards, if you want like a 3070 for 1440p gaming, right? The 6800 is gonna beat it. Like when you drop the resolution, AMD, it has a performance advantage when you drop the resolution. And if you raise, and you can't really raise the resolution too much on the 3070, since, well, if you play 4K max, you're gonna kill the 8 gigs of VRAM. So I'm not gonna lie, I would recommend the 6800 over because of the extra VRAM. But if you don't wanna, if you wanna play 4K but not use fully max settings, maybe use high, or maybe instead of using max, you use high or medium, mix of medium, high, maybe ultra settings also. You could get away with 8 gigabytes of VRAM. But if you don't want to have to do all that, I would say get the 6800. But if Nvidia adds DLSS support to more games, that can help with the 3070's VRAM issue, since what DLSS does is that it upscales the resolution, so you can have So if they do add DLSS to more games, which they are, because Cold War I think has it, Cyberpunk has it, Fortnite has it now. They are adding DLSS to more games. I can see why you'd buy a 3070 over the 6000 for DLSS and better rating performance. Though AMD will have a DLSS competitor soon, so take that as you will. Probably next year, Q2, Q3, probably around there, they'll have it, but take that as well. Now, 3080 versus 6800 XT. Oh, before I even forget, also consider the prices in your area. That's the most important thing, because for some areas, the 3070 might be cheaper than the 6800, which most areas it should be. Some areas, which will be strange, the 6800 is cheaper than the 3070. So take that into account also, what area you're in. Now, let's go to the 3080 for 6800 XT. Oh, I shouldn't have, I almost forgot. Oh, God, I forgot one more thing. The 6800 versus 3070 ray tracing. We're in the conclusion, because I should add this one last thing. Nvidia cards do perform better than AMD in ray tracing, but when I'm gonna specifically talk about the 6800 and the 3070. With those two cards are honestly really close in some games. Unless the performance of tanks, usually the 6800 is like right beside the 3070. So the ray tracing performance on the 3070 isn't that much better than the 6800. And I wouldn't be surprised that, the 6800 will catch up even more than how it already is, because of the console optimizations and all that stuff. So now to actually now move on to the 3080 versus 6800 XT, which one should you buy? So I'm not gonna lie, the 3080 has 10 gig RAM. Games are pushing more than 8. So within a year or two, that 10 gigs will be used soon. So remember, it's only some games that are pushing 9. There are probably some games that only push like 5 gigs at 4K. So it really depends on what games you're playing. Make sure that whatever game you're playing doesn't push that much VRAM when you're at the settings you want to play at. But 3080 versus 6000 XT, you can honestly go either way because the ratios in performance 6000 XT versus 3080, it's more noticeable. Like for example, one benchmark I saw the difference between the difference was between 120 FPS and 140 FPS. Some games it could be like 20 FPS 6000 XT, 120 3080 because I think it gives like Minecraft a control. That's where like any Minecraft, that's where like the performance like really tanks. So yeah, it really depends which game you're playing. If you want to get the 3080 over 6000 XT when it comes to ray tracing performance, but ray tracing plus DLSS is a good factor to think about. Whether you're buying the 30 or 6000 XT, you can get away with buying either one. To be honest, they're around the same performance at low resolution. If you're like a high refresh rate gamer, you'd probably want to go AMD this generation since they do push more frames at lower resolutions. One thing the 6000 XT is better than the 3080 at, like I said about like 5 seconds ago, is like low resolution gaming. It can get really close or even beat it when you drop the resolution a lot. People who are buying $650, $700, if it's sooner than later, then yeah, you probably should run 6000 XT. But like I said before, check the prices in your region. Some of the AIB cards for the 6000 XT is really expensive in some areas, while 3080s could be cheaper and vice versa. So take this as you will. Don't take my recommendation only. Like I think you should get a 6000 over 3070, and I think you can go either way with a 3080 versus 6000 XT. But just don't take my word for it. Check other reviews, and yeah. That's honestly what I think of these cards. I think they're great cards, great power consumption. AMD really, fixed their efficiency this gen. Like their efficiency is pretty decent. It's pretty good this gen. They're no longer the hot and loud. They're no longer the hot and loud GPU brand that they used to be. So yeah, for AMD, this is looking like a win, other than the launch, which was pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. You can also see this launch is worse than the Nvidia launch. So, alright, that's all I have for you guys today. Please like and subscribe for future videos. And yeah, that's the end. Also, please come on guys. This took like a while to make. So yeah, please like and subscribe.